Hello and good morning. My name is Twyla, Culture Group's Insights and Strategy Manager, coming to you live from Manila. Looking great, Walter. Glad you can join us today.
Oh, hey, Twyla. I mean, natural glow from all this lighting around me, but
Yes.
magandang umaga sa inyo lahat. Coming in from 13,000 kilometers away from Twyla on the other side of the world, my name is Walter de Mesa, and I am a Senior Account Manager at Wattpad, and I'm live from HQ in Toronto, Canada. So hello to everyone who's watching on LinkedIn and YouTube. This is amazing. This feels like a little bit of a homecoming for Wattpad and even for myself in the Philippines. So for everyone watching, we're absolutely excited to introduce all of you to the world of Wattpad today.
Yes, that's right. Walter, you came from the Philippines. How did you end up at Wattpad?
Yeah, right. Crazy story. I mean,
Crazy story.
even before I started my journey at Wattpad 2 years ago, I would say it started about like 2012 to 2016 when I was living in the Philippines. I was already familiar with the brand. Like people in my peripheral already, would talk about it. I knew somebody who was a big writer on Wattpad, and I knew somebody who recorded a soundtrack to a Wattpad movie or a movie that was based on a Wattpad story. And a friend of mine actually starred in a movie that was based on Wattpad. His name is James Reed. Let me just pick up all these names that I'm dropping here. But before I started at Wattpad, I already was familiar with it. And 2 years ago when I started, it was really great because as I went along the past couple of years, as someone who's Filipino, I started to discover a lot of connections with the Wattpad brand and the Philippines. I mean, Wattpad has embedded the Filipino culture so much in its history. But aside from that, within my own team and branded partnerships, there's so much in terms of the brands that we've worked with. So for example, Jollibee is a brand that we worked with. And that was, as a 5-year-old, my mom would take me to Jollibee. Or
Right.
to this day, I could still smell Eskinol because my mom would use it. So, even within brand partnerships, my team, there was already that like affinity. And as someone who's Filipino, it gave me like a sense of representation and comfort
And
within the
belongingness,
brand
I
that I
think.
represented, for sure. Yeah. What
Yeah,
about
because
yourself?
you're,
Like, I know you
oh my
have
God.
some form of connection to Wattpad too.
I've been on the platform since like 2013. It's a long history,
Okay.
but it's basically me discovering She's Dating the Gangster because it was big at that moment, and that was right before I joined Summit Media, which was my previous company before Culture Group.
Katniel?
Yes,
Okay.
Katniel. But yeah, before the movie, I did read the entire Wattpad book, and then I
Right.
read the published book, and then I saw the film, and it was actually pretty great. And that was
Right.
when I fell in love with the platform as a whole, just because it's like it's a more modern version of Project Gutenberg, which I've had a love and hate relationship with for the past few years, and I've been writing fan fiction on other platforms. So Wattpad is basically like a natural, way to go for me. But I'm not going to disclose my pen name ever. So in case you're wondering where you can read my Wattpad stories, you're not gonna be able to read them.
Well, I'm sure there's a way we'll find out. But it's really great that we're here to represent Wattpad and be able to share more about Wattpad as we go throughout this webinar. But before we start, we do have a couple of quick house rules. So in case you get disconnected, it happens. Just refresh your page, come back. Little hint: the best browser to use for our webinar would be Google Chrome. And the most important part of this is we want to be able to interact with all of you guys that's watching right now. So type in all your questions, your messages, your reactions in the comment section, and later on we will get to them.
That's right. We'll answer them as we go along. We also have a Q&A after our panel where you can meet some of our Wattpad stars. So this is an actually really exciting webinar. So let's get started. To give us a prologue, please welcome Michael Patent, my boss, founder and president of Culture Group.
Good morning, magandang umaga to all my kaibigan sa Pilipinas. My name is Michael Patton, and as you can see, I am the founder and president of Culture Group. We are Southeast Asia's leading pop culture marketing agency. And what we do here at Culture Group is ultimately bridge the world of brand, pop culture, and business. So we allow brands and advertisers to thrive within fandoms populated by Gen Z and millennial consumers here in Southeast Asia. Now, the Philippines plays an incredibly important role, not only in my heart, but also in the business that we've built. And I lived in Manila for a number of years, so I miss all of our friends and our clients there. I look forward to seeing you in person when all of this ends. But today, we're super excited to help you understand why Wattpad is the most engaged market in the world, why Philippines is the most engaged market in the world for Wattpad. In terms of quick facts, just talking about Gen Z, which is ultimately the audience that is thriving on Wattpad in the Philippines. First and foremost, by 2025, 1 out of every 4 consumers in APAC will be a member of Gen Z. Number 2, Gen Z spends roughly 2 hours and 55 minutes on social media daily, almost an hour longer than the average millennial, most of whom we believe are our consumers for this webinar today. And more importantly, in the Philippines, we know that Manila and the other cities around the country are some of the most engaged social media and mobile markets in the world. And finally, 1 in 4 Gen Z women say that they learn about new products from social media influencers, and nowhere is that more important than social and content obsessed Philippines. Now, the reason that Gen Z is thriving within Wattpad, and the reason that Wattpad is thriving in the Philippines, comes down to the belief that Gen Z is the creation generation. Nowhere in the history of mankind have we ever had a group of people that are more comfortable in front of the camera and more comfortable behind the camera. And the reason that they're comfortable in front of and behind the camera as creation generation is because they want to understand and they want to relate to each other more than any other group of people. And the way that they go about relating to each other in the context of Wattpad is through amazing storytelling. We believe Gen Z is incredibly creative. We've just shared that. And more importantly, they believe that too. Over half of them believe they're more creative than any other generation. And who are we to disagree? So Wattpad is the home to amazing storytelling. It's amazing storytelling that is written by consumers for other consumers. This is user-generated literature, some of which has been optioned into amazing content that you've seen on TV or on the big screen. Now, we've partnered with Wattpad, started about 2 months ago, but we've known the Wattpad team for years, to bring amazing opportunities on the platform to brands. For the first time ever, brands in the Philippines and globally will have the opportunity to take a look at content that is thriving through storytelling on Wattpad and option that content into branded entertainment and branded content that can be distributed in your local market. What we're hoping to show you today is the how, the who, and the why related to Wattpad and this thriving fandom in the Philippines. We have some amazing marketers here. We have our friends from McDonald's, M2M Media, folks at JS Unitrade, Unilever, Unilab, and many more. We thank you for joining. And with that, I'd love for you to watch this video, and we look forward to sharing all of our insights with you today.
Reading is an escape mechanism. Every time I read, I feel like I'm in a different setting, a different universe.
For me, writing means a form of escapism for me as a writer and for the readers that I'm making it for.
The best part about writing for me is engaging with a community. I love writing stories, but I wouldn't want to just store those stories away on my laptop and not share it with anybody.
It's freedom. Freedom of choice for the author to write anything they want. No one's gonna judge them. You can just explore different topics that most people, those published books, don't do. And I really enjoy that.
I love expressing emotions of my characters that are in my brain, and they're constantly nagging me to write.
I love it. It's my favorite hobby. If I'm not doing schoolwork or I'm at work, I'm writing. It's just so much fun for me to go to a different world and I don't know, just use my imagination. It's a lot of fun.
It's my hobby. I do it every day. I can't just get away from it. It's my imagination, but not my imagination. It's someone looking into my mind and just giving me something that I want.
So far I've finished 4 novels on Wattpad, or 5 actually, and I don't think I would have ever finished any of them if I didn't have people giving me their support as I was writing.
Wattpad gives me a way to connect with readers right away.
Wattpad's changed my life drastically. I'm pretty sure that if I wasn't posting my novels on Wattpad, I probably would not have finished one. And I feel without the site, the encouragement from readers, the encouragement from just every essence of the site itself, I don't think I would have finished a complete novel.
Thank you, Michael, for that short and sweet introduction. Now, we're definitely excited to learn more about what drives Gen Z's moving forward. And I'm seeing, some comments going into the chat there, and hopefully we want to get more questions from you guys that we'll get to a little bit later. So thank you, everyone. But don't forget to continue to give your comments, your feedback, your questions. And again, we will answer them as much as we can later on. Now, let's get to the next chapter, shall we? So next up, we have someone who I get to work with a little more closely. Next up, we have Chris Stefanik, who is the head of brand partnerships at Wattpad. Chris is responsible for Wattpad's global advertising, branded entertainment, and programmatic business. and he'll tell us how Southeast Asia's top brands can connect and engage with Wattpad's powerful community. Take it away, Chris.
Thanks so much, Walter, and super excited to be here, everyone, and give you the download on Wattpad and our brand partnerships business. So first, just wanted to give everyone a bit of the backstory and the history on Wattpad, folks that aren't aware. And really, it was first started by two co-founders, Alan and Ivan, in Toronto. You can actually go to the next slide. Back in 2006. So the company's been around for over 14 years at this point, and it was originally founded with the hopes of basically reading ebooks on your flip phone. So the first version was actually made for a Razor. For those of a certain vintage, they'll remember that old device. So the vision kind of predated the technology. And so Alan and Ivan first kind of continued to develop Wattpad as the app and as the platform. And there's a bit of a funny internal story, which is about a year later, at the time Ivan was living in Vancouver, Alan was in Toronto, and they met at the Vancouver airport to discuss the progress they had made thus far. And they had made a whopping $2 through ad spend and AdSense at that point in time. So they split a coffee in the airport to talk about the future of the company. But they didn't give up, and they pursued their vision of wanting to entertain and connect the world through stories for a number of years. 3 years later, they raised this fairly significant angel round of $600,000 and moved into a very small 200 square foot office in Toronto. But really that was the beginning of a pretty amazing adventure. And so 2 years following that, we reached our first 5 million users. In between 2012 and 2014 is actually when truly joined the company. So about 7.5 years ago. And then 2014 forward is really where we started figuring out monetization. We had our first really massive viral hit on the platform, which is Anna Todd's After, which has been turned into a movie at this point. And the sequel just came out this past year. We launched our brand partnerships group, which is the group that I run. In 2015, we actually ran our first campaign in the Philippines, the Escanol, which I know Walter had mentioned earlier in his intro, and actually a few campaigns followed the years after that. Following 2015, we launched Wattpad Studios, which Dexter is going to talk about later on in our webinar today. And then from there, it really was all about growth in the utmost. And so without going through everything on the slide, as of last year, we've grown to 90 million users, and we're proud to say we've recently been acquired by Naver, which was announced just a few months ago. And so, as most folks know, Wattpad is really the social network of stories and storytelling, and we're really looking to democratize, the self-publishing and reading and writing space, right? If you think about where we are from a size perspective, we're 90 million monthly users globally. We're signing up new users at over 100,000 per day, and really we have the world's largest kind of amount of digital IP, as far as we can tell in the world, with over 1 billion unique story uploads on the platform. And then from an overall time spent standpoint, the community spends about 23 billion minutes on the platform per month. So what to take away from this is probably a much larger community than you maybe knew us for. It's a hyper engaged community, and there really is an abundance of content on the platform. There's one stat to really take away, it's this, right? So the average user on the platform spends 52 minutes on Wattpad per day. This is reading and writing serialized stories on your phone, right? This isn't something where you could be multitasking with other devices or other apps. You're truly leaning in, reading a story that obviously appeals to you, that you truly love. And this is really, I think, the most indicative stat around what makes Wattpad special. From a global reach standpoint, you could pay attention to the bottom right of the map. We're over 18 million monthly users in Southeast Asia. So it certainly is a very, very large market for us and a very high growth market, hence why we've partnered with Culture Group to really, re-enter the market from a partnership standpoint. You can see, the remainder of other markets. Of course, the US is quite large, and we have basically a presence in many other markets around the world. From a Philippines perspective, it actually is our third largest market after the US and Indonesia, with over 6 million monthly audience, spending close to 1 billion minutes reading per month. And it's a heavy Gen Z and younger millennial audience, right? So, and female. So we're 84% female, and basically primarily, 13 to 24. You see the buckets at the bottom there, right? So for folks thinking about the brands that they work for, if you have that younger Gen Z female-focused audience, certainly Wattpad potentially is a place where you could find that audience. So to just double click on our Philippines users slightly, if you look at our top tags and our top categories, the one thing I would say is that they love love, right? So the top tags that they are consuming around romance, love, fan fiction, and really anything BTS, K-pop, and K-drama. That's really the through line of this, and I know we'll talk more about it later as Twyla comes on to do a bit of deep dive from an insights perspective. Very similarly on the right side of the category here, right? Just a lot of time is being spent reading and writing kind of romance, fan fiction content on the platform today. So to go a bit deeper on our brand partnerships business, there really is kind of two primary ways in which brands are working with us today. The first and the left side here is writing contests and in general kind of influencer stories. So brands can work with our team and the culture group team to essentially push out a writing prompt that allows the community to create stories around a theme or topic area that may be relevant for a brand. So this could be everything from, a Battle of the Beast contest with Sci-Fi Network here to, sour than sweet love stories for partners at Mondelez, and really everything in between. So we're at the point now where we've literally run hundreds of these contests for folks and partners across many markets, including, of course, the Philippines, UK, Canada, UK, Australia, and many more. The other way to work with us is through your kind of tried and tested media, which largely makes its way via targeted video media that sits between chapters. And you can find more of the information around kind of our media products on brands.wattpad.com, where you can find our full media kit. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to our hosts, who are going to introduce Dexter.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. You probably have no idea how surreal it is for me as a Wattpad fan to learn about the company's history this way. I've been on the platform so long, I didn't even know this story up until now. So to those watching, remember, if you have questions for Chris, please go ahead and send them in the comment section below. Keep them coming, and watch out for the Wattpad Brand Original segment coming up in a bit. For now, let's welcome Dexter Ong, Head of International Strategy for Wattpad. Dexter has worked at Wattpad for the last 3 years and has brought his expert knowledge of the Asia-Pacific market to bolster the company's efforts in the region. Dexter will show us what Wattpad Studios is all about and how Southeast Asian brands can tap the best and the brightest of the creation generation. Hey, Dexter.
Hey, Twyla. Hey, before I begin, I'd just like to start off with a video to give an example of what we do at Wattpad Studios.
I'm gonna be your spirit guide.
The amazing story of the amateur author who wrote a novel on her phone.
Writing the world as you see it, the world as you know it.
I'm done playing this game.
Wattpad's changed my life drastically.
How would you drive a girl away?
All of this is happening because of the game.
She oversees a worldwide empire of books.
That's the power of a good book.
Hi, everyone. very glad to be here to tell you more about Wattpad Studios. I'm sure many of you might be familiar with some of our successful film and TV adaptations based on popular Wattpad stories, such as The Kissing Booth on Netflix, after the very successful global movie that was originally a Harry Styles inspired fan fiction. And in the Philippines, there are two very iconic movies, Diary Ng Kang Yet and She's Dating the Gangster. Next slide. Today, I'm very grateful to have the chance to tell you more about how we work with studios and publishers around the world to adapt popular Wattpad stories and create big entertainment hits. Firstly, a bit of an overview about our business and how we actually work. Our studios division is actually divided into three key parts. One, we have an in-house talent management team that works directly with our top tier writers to support them in these adaptation projects as they embark on this new journey. Second, on the entertainment side, we work directly with leading studios, networks around the world to produce projects together for film, TV, and streaming platforms. Thirdly, we work with the world's top publishing houses to publish Wattpad titles to mass markets. We also launched our own imprint, Wattpad Books, where we're actually publishing books directly ourselves. Globally, more than 1,000 Wattpad stories have been adapted as books, series, and films. On this map, you'll see that actually we work with global partners around the world where we have strategic relationships with and have projects in development, including in Asia, we work with MediaCorp in Singapore. In Indonesia, we work substantially with video and screenplay. And in Philippines, we actually work with Anvil Publishing and we an imprint of the National Bookstore, where we have a joint imprint called Bliss Books. Next slide. I want to explain a bit about how we work with our partners and the steps towards us making an entertainment hit. Firstly, the first and probably most critical part is discovering the best stories for our partners. For a regular Wattpad user, what you see is the consumer-facing data, like the number of reads, the votes. But behind the scenes, we have dedicated machine learning teams, and our teams actually spend a lot of effort to review data that helps them really pick out stories that are truly trending. This can mean looking at data that like read time and engagement so that we know that people are actually really reading and completing a story and not just clicking into a story. This also means that we are truly looking at up and coming content trends that are happening right now, rather than something that is popular, say 2 to 3 years back. And so we really go into what genres are really people consuming more of, what kind of plots are more popular these days to help our partners really find truly trending stories that are really popular in certain specific local markets. The next part on adaptation development, once a story gets picked for development, we then make use of all the data points we know about the story. This can include reading and engagement activity that really is like activating a real-time focus group of millions. What scene did readers enjoy the most? Where did they comment the most? What characters do they root for the most? This can really help with the adaptation process to make sure that you're keeping what readers love and giving them what they look for in the adaptation. And just to elaborate a bit more, this is really different from picking up a regular best-selling novel, right? Since every Wattpad story is like a live document where the connection between the reader and the writer is still live and ongoing. You can comment, you can ask the writer questions, and we provide the tools for them to connect. Whereas in the traditional publishing industry, if you do option and acquire a best-selling novel, for example, the connection between the publisher and the end consumer that purchased the book actually is lost through the many layers of distribution. Finally, and most importantly, marketing, which is sort of what we are all here for. For every Wattpad adaptation, our teams work to ensure that we run a proper marketing campaign to target the fans of the story to make sure that they tune into the project. So whether it's going to watch an adaptation on Netflix or to go and buy a movie ticket to watch it in theaters, again, the ability for us to maintain that live community of fans that can be activated in support of an adaptation is really unique to our business. Earlier, you heard my colleague Chris talk about different kinds of campaigns and ad inventories that we can use to promote the show. And this is exactly what we bring to the table with our projects that really add meaningful value. And my colleague will explain a bit more about that later. We now have over 75 projects in development around the world, spanning all genres from romance to sci-fi to horror, with writers coming from all parts of the country, all parts of the world, I mean. Next slide. In the US, we have had success with one of our biggest romance stories on our platform, After, which is the Harry Styles inspired fan fiction that has become a New York Times bestseller, selling millions of copies around the world in translations in different languages. The story has 2 movies released, becoming box office successes, and we're already in production for the 3rd and 4th title of the franchise. We also have a series with Hulu. We have 2 seasons that have been produced as a supernatural teen thriller, Light as a Feather, which has received 10 Daytime Emmy nominations. Next slide. In Asia, we have seen Wattpad stories being adapted in local markets in Philippines and Indonesia, for example, that have done really well in local box office and have found new lives and audiences in the streaming platforms. We have previously worked with TV5 in the Philippines with a primetime branded blog called Wattpad Presents, producing top Tagalog romance stories in the country into series. More than 50 stories were adapted across more than 200 episodes across a time span of about 2 to 3 years. We now have more than 10 projects currently in development that will likely hit screens very soon. So please stay tuned, including The Cutting Edge, a K-drama inspired romantic comedy, and Paradise Garden, a mystery thriller set in Jakarta. Next slide. In January alone this year, we launched 2 titles in Asia, including Slow Dancing, a 6-part digital series with MediaCorp in Singapore, based on a hugely popular Wattpad story with more than 10 million reads, written by a 25-year-old Wattpad star writer in Singapore. In Indonesia, we launched A Turn On, a sexy romantic comedy series on the local streaming platform Video, produced by Screenplay Films. These are just some of the examples of the projects that we have been working on recently, and with a few more to be coming up. So please stay tuned. With that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Chris, who will talk more about branded originals.
All right, hi everyone. Me again, excited to introduce Wattpad Brand Originals. And thank you, Dexter, for going through the great Wattpad Studios 101. So really excited to share this news with everyone on the webinar today, as we actually only went live with this news last week. And so Wattpad Brand Originals is really the combination of the world that and a part of the organization that Dexter works in, which is Wattpad Studios, and the part of the organization that I run point on, which is Wattpad Brand Partnerships. And really the point here is to bring the studios models to brands and basically put them in the producer's chair with us to produce original content and original programming. And the first question I want to answer is, why are we doing this now? And the reality is that to engage and to advertise and to entertain Gen Z requires a bit of a different approach, right? The days of just delivering linear ads through network TV or ad-supported models is kind of behind us. This is a generation that wants to be a part of the conversation. They don't want to be spoken to. They really want to interact with brands. And they want to interact with brands that have purpose. And so, as we thought about where Wattpad plays, and the fact that we have access to all of this IP and we have access to this young, highly engaged audience, it really felt like a perfect time for us to work with partners to truly entertain them and then not just advertise to them. And that really is the whole thesis here. And so we believe we're in a fairly differentiated place as Wattpad to produce original content with brands because of the vast library of IP we have access to. As I mentioned, the fact that we have this highly engaged audience, not just in the Philippines or not just in Indonesia, but really around the world. And we truly have a safe space where we can highlight and uplift kind of underrepresented and marginalized voices that maybe wouldn't have normally had a shot to see their story be told or have their story achieve mainstream success. And this is something that's certainly been very exciting and interesting to a number of our global partners thus far. And as Dexter mentioned in his previous chat, I mean, the secret sauce really to the studios model is the data-driven approach that we take through story DNA and through audience data. And we're going to take this same approach and this same model as we look to work on projects with brands. We'll take a very data-driven approach, and our view is that this certainly de-risks the whole model, right? We're not deciding on a specific creative idea out of thin air, so to speak, right? It's coming very much rooted in data. The development approach is very much going to be rooted in data, and we'll be leaning on our experts like Dexter and team to really support us through this process as we start originating and launching brand partnerships and Wattpad Brand Original partnerships specifically. So we'll be taking 2 different approaches to Wattpad Brand Originals. The first is very much influenced by the studio's business, where we will work really closely with a brand and their agency partners to basically ideate on the type of IP or story that they may be looking to invest in. We know that there's a set of very large stories on the platform that have massive fandoms that will likely appeal to brand partners. We're excited to bring this to them, but we want to hear from our partners and understand what type of content do they want to create, what type of story are they trying to tell, and we can work with the team then to ladder that back and see where there's overlap in terms of the brand values and the top IP on the platform, and that's hopefully where there's a very particular magical moment that will happen. Following that, it goes through a fairly standard kind of entertainment life cycle where we'll go through development, production, we'll work with our studios team and our local partners to figure out the right approach to distribution, and then the brand partnerships team, will plug back in to ensure we're amplifying and promoting this content across, the 90 million plus folks that are on Wattpad every single month. Approach number 2 is going back to that writing contest product that I mentioned earlier. So as we've done many writing contests globally with many brand partners for many years, the conversations have often led to a point: how can we take one or more of the hundreds of stories we've generated out of a contest and do something larger or bigger with it? How can we turn it into a branded podcast? How can we turn it into a short film? How can we turn it into even a physical book? And that's really what influenced this second approach, where you run a writing contest with the brand partnerships team at Wattpad. We'll generate hundreds of original pieces of content or original stories for you that are aligned to your brand and your brand's values. And then we'll look at all the data, and we'll work with our content team and the folks at studios to basically recommend and land on a piece of IP or story that we think can be something more, that really can evolve into something off Wattpad, whether or not it's a short film, series, or otherwise. And that really is the exciting part about approach 2, is that there is a bit of a walk before you run approach here, right? Do we have to dive full into a feature film on day one, or can we start producing a digital series or a short film, right? Everything really is possible because Wattpad operates with the primary unit of a story and a written story, and the possibilities are fairly endless here. So I wanted to do one quick case study from the region, which is Cornetto, and working with, of course, the Unilever and Mindshare team a few years ago. And what we did was we partnered with Ali Looney, one of the largest writers on the platform at the time, to create an original story that had the fans voting on the outcome of each chapter. So folks on Wattpad already feel like they're a part of the story creation process with their writers as they, contribute to the journey. They really were, right? They were really voting on the direction of the story. The story did so well that Unilever and Mindshare are partnering with Viva to turn that one summer into an actual feature film that was distributed through actual theaters and did phenomenally well that summer. Ended up being, a blockbuster hit and was, certainly an ROI positive story. Any way you kind of looked at it. Sales for Cornetto increased by 20%. Brand love or brand affinity grew by 7 points, and the overall program ended up winning a gold medal for best branded content at the Festival of Media Asia Pacific Awards. So certainly a campaign that we're very proud of at Wattpad. I know it got a lot of love within the walls of Unilever and Mindshare as well in the region, and we're excited to do this and do it to an even bigger extent now that we're back in the region, and now that Wattpad Brand Originals is live and something we're talking to many partners about today. Twyla, over to you to chat about insights in the region.
Thank you so much, Chris, again, for that great presentation, and Dexter, thank you as well. Thank you for everyone for sticking around for our webinar. If you have questions again for Chris and Dexter, please feel free to type them in the comment section and we'll get them answered for you in a bit. For now, let's talk about content trends and community insights. So as you can see here, this is basically the history of Wattpad in the Philippines. We've learned about the history and the opportunities within it with Chris and Dexter's decks. And now we'd like to give you a tour of the top trends in the country, which will help us understand the minds of Filipino Gen Zs. As you know, Wattpad has had a long history in the Philippines. Chris, Walter, and Dexter have mentioned that like thousands of young Filipinos, the first Wattpad book I've ever read is She's Dating the Gangster. And that story was actually first published on Wattpad in 2011, along with Diary ng Pangit. And since then, writers on Wattpad have achieved a level of celebrity with whole sections of bookstores dedicated to books by Wattpad authors. I've been on a couple of book signings on MIBF and several other book signings with Wattpad authors, and the community is amazing. Several movies were also based on Wattpad books, and they became box office hits, as Dexter mentioned. So as you know, this box office hit starred some of the hottest Filipino actors, including Danielle Padilla and Catherine Bernardo for She's Dating the Gangster, James Reid and Nadine Lustre for Diary ng Pangit, and Talk Back and You're Dead. That was a good movie. We have Liza Soberano and Enrico Hill for Just the Way You Are, Colleen Garcia and Derek Ramsey for Ex with Benefits. Wattpad stories like That One Summer and Bloody Crayons and Gaya sa Pelikula are also adapted into movies, web series. All of these things really made Wattpad a household name in the Philippines. But the question is, why is Wattpad important to the Filipino youth? Next slide, please. We've mentioned accessibility as one of the main reasons for that, but I think it's essential here to highlight how the platform addresses a glaring need in the Philippines. Millions of Filipino youth don't have access to public libraries. In 2018, the National Library of the Philippines reported that out of the 42,000 LGUs in the country that were mandated by law to establish public libraries and reading centers, only 3% of them were able to create reading spaces for their communities, which means we only have 1,400 plus public libraries in the country. Wattpad provides readers of all ages a safe space to read and download original stories on their phones anytime, anywhere. And because Wattpad is a safe space, it has become a breeding ground for aspiring Filipino writers like me. The platform democratized self-publication to allow for diversity and inclusivity, two things that are staples in the Filipino DNA. We're a country of 7,640 plus islands and 180 plus ethnic groups and languages. So it's basically a well-known fact that we are one of the most gender equal countries in the world, some of the most hospitable, warm, and loving people. Next slide. This is why it comes as no surprise that the top genre for the Wattpad Philippine community is romance. We love. We're into love teams and hugot lines, kilig moments, and that translates well into numbers, as you can see in this slide. On Wattpad, Filipinos spent more than 294 billion minutes reading romance stories in the past couple of months, and there were 79,000 unique stories written about Katniel alone. That's huge. And think about all these minutes spent reading romance stories on Wattpad, but actually there's more to these stories than meets the eye. Next slide, please. These are the top 3 Tagalog stories on Wattpad. And apart from romance, all these books have 3 things in common: family, friendships, and women empowerment. All stories feature strong female characters and multidimensional, nuanced male characters. These writers are not just writing for the sake of writing love stories. Next slide, please. Now you're probably wondering, where the heck do these stories come from? Well, that's what you get if you give young Filipino writers a chance and a voice. At CG, we like calling Gen Zs, as Michael mentioned, the creation generation. The kids of today have access to a multitude of platforms to express themselves and be creative. On Wattpad, Gen Zs are reading and writing about the lives they wish to live as like photographers and cinematographers, writers, artists, and that translates to 362,000 stories, 26 billion reading minutes. That's a lot. Next slide. And they're not only writing about the lives they wish to lead, they also write and read about the world they wish to live in. They care about body positivity, about true gender equality, diversity and inclusivity, and climate change. In the past couple of months, they've spent 872 minutes reading up about social issues that the world is facing today, and that matters to them. Next slide, please. So more than the love for love and the passion for kilig stories, Pinoy teens are continuously actually educating themselves and making a stand on things that matter. We recently did a survey among Filipino Gen Z Wattpadders, and we found out that a huge percentage of them are taking a stand on equal rights, transgender rights, and even public gender-neutral bathrooms. And because this generation has had media and internet exposure their whole lives, they're a lot less likely to change their opinion on a brand based on advertising alone as compared to their millennial counterparts. So only 19% of Gen Z said that their opinions would strongly change if a brand decided to include them in their narrative. But for millennials, it's 35%. Next slide, please. So the challenge to brands who want to target Gen Z consumers isn't anymore about virality or media spans or who you put into your ads. It's about translating the purpose and the values of your brand through stories that Gen Zs can easily understand. And to do that, it's very important to get to know your audience beyond their demographics, beyond the numbers, to create solutions to the problems they face and to allow them to be a part of your narrative. So start by asking yourself this one question. How do you want your brand to be remembered? I'll let you think about the answer to that throughout the day and throughout this webinar. For now, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions about trends or insights, please feel free to comment them down below. I think it's time to get Walter in the show. There you go. Hey, Walter.
Hey, Twy, how's it going?
All good. I think it's time for us to do the panel and introduce our Wattpad stars.
Yeah, I really appreciated how you come from this lens of a creator and a writer on Wattpad. So you truly understand how Wattpad is actually a safe space to not only talk about these kilig moments, but for different themes like LGBTQ, mental health, and female empowerment. So really appreciated that.
I love it. There was this big boom in 2016 with like totally great love teams and love stories from Wattpad. But really now with the new audience that we have, there's a lot more that brands can do when it comes to giving their narratives a whole new meaning and a whole new story. And doing that are these two people who are coming to be a part of our panel for today. But before that, I think we need a video.
Yes, so here's a short video to give you some insight into our growing community. Hey everyone, thank you again for sending in all these great questions through the comments in LinkedIn and YouTube. We'll get to those shortly, but for now, we are thrilled to have two of our biggest Wattpad stars who fuel the creativity in our platform in the Philippines. So to start, we have Tina Lata, also known in the Wattpad world as Blue_Maiden. Hi Tina, how's it going? So Tina is the queen of pop culture storytelling. Her stories have tapped into Gen Z niches inspired by gamers and K-drama like. So for a lot of you K-drama fans in the Philippines, we might, ask her the question and get her to weigh in on the big debate of, Team Namdo-san or Team Good Boy. So maybe we'll ask her that question. Her biggest hit, The Four Bad Boys and Me, was completed only last year and has had over 313 million reads.
That's cool. And alongside Tina, we also have Demi Abilon, known to Filipino readers as Anak ni Rizal. Demi is an all-around star with a YouTube channel, Twitter, and Wattpad. Her stories range from romance to mystery to even paranormal intrigue. With 30 million readers on the first installment of her supernatural thriller series, The Peculiars, Demi is definitely a writer to watch.
Hi.
Hi. Hello,
Magandang
guys.
umaga, Demi.
Magandang umaga. It's a very sunny morning here in the Philippines. You're both, where are you guys from, by the way?
I'm from Bulacan. From QC.
And Tina is from QC. Hello, guys.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. So we just want to, get familiar with you guys throughout this chat right here. So there were a lot of insights presented earlier that we heard about, and now this is a great opportunity to hear from the both of you about your own personal journeys on Wattpad. So let's start with you, Tina. So Tina, we know that you joined Wattpad in 2012, and we've seen you grow on the platform from writing EXO and BTS fan fiction to now having your stories published and adapted into TV and film formats. So we want to know, how did you first come across Wattpad, and what made you stay till, almost 10 years later?
First, I was just browsing, apps to read,
Right.
and then I came across Wattpad. And actually, I was 3 months pregnant, and then I was looking for something to do because pregnant person is sometimes emotional and everything, so I need to have something to cheer me up. So I decided to read and eventually to write in Wattpad, and then after that, it's a very good journey for me. So I'm here. I stayed for I think 10 years now.
Yeah. That's a pretty long time. How about you, Demi? How you've come a long way since joining Wattpad in 2011. That's even like before me or Tina. That's a lot. How would you describe your what would you choose, or how would you describe your journey in Wattpad, and what made you choose Wattpad as a platform to express your creativity, and what drives you to create more content?
So, hello again, everyone. Hi, Twyla. Hi, Walter. So, my name is Demi. After this experience, totally new for me. And I've been writing in Wattpad for almost 10 years. And I must say that I'm really grateful to Wattpad because it became my stepping stone to awesome opportunities that had a big impact on my life. Like becoming a published author, which is my childhood dream. Wattpad is the only writing platform that made a strong bond community for writers and readers that allows us to express our stories and creativity. Until now, I'm still writing and at the same time giving back to the community through my YouTube videos because I'm inspired to make an impact or change for the youth and also to help aspiring writers in Wattpad.
That's so true. I agree with the whole community thing. 'Cause that's also the reason why I've stuck into Wattpad as a platform for the longest time. Even though there are a lot of like platforms out there for fan fiction or for other free books.
Yeah, I think the community aspect is really why a lot of our writers stay. And speaking of community, Tina, you've built your own massive following on Wattpad with 2.9 million followers, slightly edging out my following of 17. So that's quite a bit. And so how would you describe your own readers that follow you and are so loyal to you? And how would you describe the Wattpad community in general?
I think my readers is the same with the other writers. What I love about Wattpad community, especially my readers, is that they followed me on all of my social media platforms. So it's not just about Wattpad. They follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everything, name it all. So they're very supportive and very loyal. That's what I think. That's one of the reason why I always choose Wattpad because of the community. It's very positive. It's very supporting. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest thing that I love about Wattpad.
Yeah, I
I'd
really
love
like.
to.
I
Yeah.
really
Go
like
ahead.
how you express that. Your followers are so loyal to you, and they really follow you everywhere you go. Because I
Yeah.
mean, you specifically, and a few of our other stars in the Philippines, even within Wattpad, you share about your own perspectives and express yourself. But even off Wattpad, you guys also share and talk about. Have conversations about LGBTQ rights and mental health and female empowerment. So it's really great that you've connected with them throughout your whole, basically, your whole digital life.
That's true. I'd love to ask the same question to Demi because her readers, which I think is now close to 500,000, followed her to other platforms as well for additional content like YouTube and Twitter. You mentioned you've been doing vlogs a lot. What's your relationship like with your readers, and how important is the Wattpad community to you as a creator?
It's really amazing and surprising at the same time because the readers are very engaging and active on social media. Like, for example, after I posted one chapter on my ongoing story, they tend to go to Twitter immediately and they'll tweet me their reactions or feedbacks, which is really fulfilling as a writer. The community is important to me because it motivated me to keep on creating more interesting content.
That's true. And I think a lot of your followers are aspiring writers as well. So you've
Yeah.
been creating a lot of videos about like how to write your first chapter or how to make book art for your books, which is amazing because then we have this community of creators who not only read but also inspire others, and it becomes like a ripple effect of like positive, impact on each other.
That's right. And I know Tina and Demi, you both mentioned that, you've been able to turn this passion of writing and it's given you all these other opportunities. And so we also know, Tina, that you have, been able to work extensively with brands and media partners before on branded campaigns, and you've gone into book deals through Wattpad. Tina, for instance, you've worked with Jollibee in 2016, one of my personal favorite brands, and FWD Life. What's that experience like, and what have you learned from working with brands?
Working with brands, I think I get to know them more. Biggest example is FWD because I never heard of them until I have worked with them with Wattpad. So I got to know them more and got to see what the services they like. And for Jollibee, that's my family's favorite before. But after I have worked with their campaign, we cannot go with other fast food chains anymore, only Jollibee. So that's what is the impact of the campaign for me.
I love how you being able to work with brands has built your own loyalty to those brands, where you're like, I'm, now an avid Jollibee consumer, but then you also get familiarized with brands that I've never heard of before. And you get to learn about that, which is great.
And along with your journey of working with these brands is the same kind of journey with your followers, because they follow you closely wherever you go. As you said, they're very supportive. Demi, I know you've been working with SciComm for a long time with publishing your books, and you've also worked with TV5 before with the adaptation of your story, The Peculiars. What's your creative process like when you're working with a media company in recreating your work into various media formats? And what have you learned about working on projects like this?
It was 2017 when I first worked with TV5. Actually, it was my first deal before having a publishing contract, which is kind of mind-blowing. It was a collaborative process. I remember TV5 called me for a meeting with the production team, and we discussed how we can compress my novel into a television movie. I didn't write the script, but from time to time, they used to update and consult me. And the most important thing that I learned, I guess, that the reality that some novels are really hard to adapt in a movie.
That's true. That's a struggle even for viewers like us, because then, after reading the story and being loyal to it while it progresses, your expectation changes. But at the same time, it's great for writers like us to be given the chance to have a say on the movies and the television series that we want to see on screen. Because for me, for example, as a writer, one of the main reasons I write is because these are the stories I've been wanting to read, but no one seems to be writing them, right? So now that we have a chance and a voice through Wattpad, there's a lot that we can do and a lot of creative things that we can make. So I guess it's time now. Before we head over to our panel and our Q&A, I think we have one question here that I know your fans would love to hear about before we head over to our Q&A. What trends are you guys seeing on Wattpad recently, and what are you guys working on right now? Because I know your fans would love to know if you have teasers to tell us, or if there's anything that your readers can look forward to.
For me, for the past, I think, 8 years, I've been writing romance, teen fiction. So right now, I'm trying a new genre, which is fantasy sci-fi. That's I'm working on right now.
Okay, and Demi?
One of the trends on Wattpad that I'm seeing right now is that both readers and writers are invested in series stories. They're more satisfied in several books with different story arcs. And lately, I'm working on creating more helpful contents for writers on my YouTube channel, and I have an upcoming published book. It will be my sixth, sixth book, I guess.
Exciting time.
I love the teasers, and I'm sure a lot of your readers are going to be looking forward to, hearing more from you guys and hearing how you're going to work with brands in the future as well. And so we just want to say thank you, Demi, and thank you, Tina, for joining us. So now it's time to answer all the questions that you have been sharing throughout the comments on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So let's bring out the rest of the group.
All right, the gang is here. We've got a handful of questions from the comment section. Thank you everyone for sending them in. Keep them coming. Now is your time to ask their questions. Our first question is for Dexter. Why do you think Gen Zs in Southeast Asia are so creative?
I'm so glad I got asked this question. Truthful, I actually grew up in Southeast Asia. I'm actually, my family's from Singapore, and I grew up in Singapore. And second part, I started out my career at Wattpad, spending a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and I work a lot with our top tier writers coming out of the region. So, I mean, if you ask me that question, I think there are a few unique reasons that I feel our Southeast Asia writers are very special. One is that, firstly, I think people in Southeast Asia consume a lot of content globally, right? They watch K-dramas, they watch their local language dramas, they also watch things that are coming out of the US. And I think that whole confluence of being able to absorb all of those different cultural trends make them uniquely placed to be incredibly able to sort of tap into all of those things to sort of write their stories. And I think that's really incredibly special for Southeast Asia. I think the second part, when you think about a writer writing coming from Philippines or from Singapore, they are actually writing for a global audience, right? They're writing for people, whether in the US or in Turkey or in Europe. And I think a lot of our writers have that kind of ambition. They want to write a global story and they want to be able to tap into and relate to all of those different audiences. And I feel that is something that's incredibly special and unique about a lot of our top tier writers coming out of Asia. And I think we're incredibly proud of their ability to be able to do that.
I really love that, because as somebody from Southeast Asia, I totally identify with wanting to consume a diverse amount of content, not only from your local region, but also globally. Chris, we have another question that also came in for you. So how do brands interact with Wattpad that keeps them different from brands that might not interact with Wattpad?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for that, Walt. And it really comes down to brands that are providing value to the community, right? So if they're engaging in a program that actually is generating excitement for the broader community, that's generally when it's like a win-win-win. So I can use a North American example to paint the picture, but recently we did a campaign with Johnson & Johnson and Clean & Clear, where they invited the community to create stories featuring the person in your life that allowed you to be your truest, authentic self. And this was just generally something that the broader community wanted to engage with. They were very excited to tell their story. We generated, this was a United States campaign, but over 1,000 original stories in this campaign, which of course people taking their time out of their day to write 500-word stories, that's quite the investment. And when you package that along with a broader media campaign involving our Wattpad stars, our influencers to get involved in as well, you're creating this kind of groundswell of excitement around a campaign. And so really when brands are coming with that kind of perspective around they want to do something, or they're going to engage in a program that they know something the community already wants to do, that's really where we see kind of magic happen. And there's plenty more examples we can kind of speak to, but really I encourage brands on any platform just to think about how they're planning to activate and generate value for their particular audience within the platform they're going to.
Right. As a follow-up to that, I know you mentioned about how that specific brand, J&J asked the community to, or the Wattpad community to really share and express themselves in terms of like how do they find confidence, for example. But somebody else asked in the chat as a follow-up to that, what are some shifts that we're currently experiencing and seeing in terms of the content that's being created on Wattpad, specifically in writing? And also, do you see this in other types of media as well? So that could be for you, Chris, or Dexter.
Dexter, you want to take a stab at that one, or?
Yeah, I can. I feel like I'm always very impressed by the stories that I write. I think Gen Z and millennials will surprise a lot of you in terms of how they absorb and they relate to things that are happening around them. Big events like when we think about climate change, or we think about issues about mental health issues, high school bullying, cyberbullying. I am always very impressed by some of the top stories and how these young writers are relating to these trends and bringing it to their own personal experiences and writing it in story format. And I think that's something that I feel like a lot of sometimes when I think about brands or sort of studios and traditional networks are sort of missing the opportunity in engaging with that generation in following with these sort of cultural conversations. And I think that's really sort of something that I really think it's important. I think it's a shift that has happened quite dramatically over the last few years, how in touch some of these younger generations are with some of the global trends that are going on.
Yeah, I really liked what you shared about how they really take from their surroundings and the events that's going on around them. Because a few of our writers in the Philippines actually shared that BL series becoming big all over Southeast Asia is what inspired them to start shifting their story content and their writing over to LGBTQ plus content.
I want to ask the same question to our writers here, because they have like personal experience with seeing these trends happening. Tina or Demi, have you guys ever considered changing up your content based on what is trendy, and how does this affect your writing journey?
For me, I don't usually go with the trends. For me, as of now, because I don't want to push myself to the things that I really don't like writing. But I'm also wanting to improve myself, changing the genres that I have before, like from shifting from romance to fantasy to sci-fi.
That's true. That's a really big jump. How about you, Demi? How was it like changing from for example stories like Wake Up Dreamers to creating a fantasy sci-fi like The Peculiars?
Yeah, actually, I just shifted from science fiction to young adult story which tackles mental health, slice of life. I think I'm just right on time on the trend, so I'm on the mid. Cool with it.
Awesome. We have one last question for Tina from Maki Oglang. Miss Tina, after the huge success of TFPBAM, what else should we expect on your writing journey in Wattpad from 2012 to 2021? I think he's an avid fan.
Yeah. Maki is my friend. She's also a writer. So after the Four Bad Boys and Me, it got recently adapted by Star Cinema last year. So right now, currently I think I have 10 published books, and this year I'll be having another 2 published books, and then I'm I'll start to write sci-fi this year. I've finished writing my fantasy story, which is Polaris, and its sequel. So for me, I think I'll be doing another fanfic story as well, because you're gonna miss the old stories that you write before. So I'll be starting. Actually, I'm writing it now. It's just started. It's for a local Filipino group, which is SB19.
Oh my God!
Because I'm done. I'm done with EXO and BTS already. So
All right.
the next one is SB19.
Okay, that's an exclusive here. You guys should definitely watch out for the SB19 fanfic coming up from Tina. How about you, Demi? You mentioned you have like a book coming up. Is there anything else on the works?
Not, I'm just focused on creating more YouTube contents.
All right. If you are an aspiring writer, I really suggest you check out Demi's stuff. She's really good at giving advice to aspiring writers. Okay. Do you have any more questions for our panel? I think it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, I think we've gotten some great questions, and we just want to say a big thank you to Dexter, Chris, Demi, and Tina. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have left for the Q&A session. So we just want to thank also all our viewers on LinkedIn and YouTube for asking all the questions and for tuning in today.
Thank you all to for those who stay tuned, who are in our YouTube and LinkedIn page. And thank you to our speakers and guests today, Tina, Demi, Chris, Dexter, and Michael. This has been such a productive learning experiences. And this is the last part of the program, but it's definitely not the end of the story, right, Walter?
Oh, absolutely. We're essentially just beginning to write the story, right? No pun intended. And and we want to write the next chapter with you. So if you want to keep in touch after this webinar for brainstorming sessions and pocket meetings, feel free to reach out through the details on your screen right now.
All right. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah, also thanks everyone. And again, I just want to say we had a great night and we are morning over there. I'm Walter de Mesa from Wattpad.
Yeah. I am Twyla Vergana from Culture Group. See you guys in the next chapter.